A continuación, invitamos al doctor Leo Anthony Celi. Él es médico en formación en Harvard, Stanford y MIT, especialista en enfermedades infecciosas, medicina crítica e informática biomédica. Es reconocido internacionalmente por liderar el desarrollo del proyecto MIMIC y sus extensiones, los cuales son repositorios de datos abiertos de salud muy influyentes a nivel mundial o global, que han impulsado miles de publicaciones y ha permitido el avance de la IA o inteligencia artificial aplicada al cuidado de los pacientes. Doctor Celi, bienvenido y muchas gracias por acompañarnos en nuestro congreso.
Hello, I'm just checking where I could share my screen. I found it. Okay, share screen. Allow and window. Let me just do this so that it's easy. And then I will go to presenter's view. Can you see my screen now? Oh, I won't be able to tell. I'm gonna start talking. Someone text me if you're not able to see the screen. So I'm relying on either Felipe or Geraldine to text me if you cannot see my screen. The title of this talk is AI stands for Alea Iacta. Alea Iacta Est was stated by Julius Caesar upon crossing the Rubicon. It means that the die is cast. There is no turning back. The ship has sailed and it will not go back to the shore. We use health records to train artificial intelligence, and we assume that health records are accurate representation of health and disease in the real world. This assumption is flawed because there are billions of patients, including those in Colombia, who don't have access to healthcare and whose diseases are not represented in the data, leading to an incomplete capture of ground truths. Okay, okay. I was looking at my WhatsApp and Pito was saying that you can't see the screen, but now you could. So, as I was saying, that health records that we have may not really represent the ground truths about health and disease because so many people don't even interface with the health system during their lifetime. Data is not an objective representation of the world. It is a representation of the world as seen through the lens of the observers. Science is what we find under the lamppost. It does not explain the world that's in the dark. At present, we train AI on the world represented by data collected in a non-neutral space. Non-neutral space means power structures drive the impact of care on patient outcomes. These extraneous forces represent missing confounders when we model the effect of tests and treatments. Here are two papers that argue against health records being accurate representation of health and disease in the real world. The paper to the left comes from our group, and we describe several medical devices and equipment that are in routine use, not just in the intensive care units, but across hospitals and clinics, which are biased to a certain degree. And the reason for the bias is that these devices and equipment are prototyped and then optimized on a select demographic. And typically, these are college age white males in rich countries. So I think everyone is familiar with the pulse oximeter that does not perform well in terms of estimating the oxygen levels in dark skinned individuals like me. But we also know about the ECG, where the amplitude is small for large breasted individuals. We know that the EEG leads to capture brain waves do not stick well when you have a certain kind of hair. What this all means is that a certain number would mean different depending on who you are. And for sure, the machines will not know that unless we provide context to the data that we are inputting to encoders. The paper to the right also comes from our group, and here we demonstrate that we're collecting data with different intensity, frequency across patients. And the frequency with which we collect data is affected by our subconscious bias. In this paper, this is actually not an unconscious bias. We demonstrated that we tend to draw blood less often among patients who don't speak English well here in the United States. And the reason for that is that if you are going to take a blood test in the middle of the night, we have to find an interpreter so that we could explain why we are waking up the patient and why we're sticking their finger with this needle. So sometimes we forego doing the blood test, especially if we couldn't find an interpreter in the middle of the night. What I wanted to really emphasize is that there is no responsible AI without data sharing. What we have learned in the last decade is that electronic health records are very complex. No one group, even if they're coming from MIT or Harvard, will understand all the complexity of the data. And this is the beauty of data sharing, like the medical information mart for intensive care that our group has contributed to the machine learning community. We have about 100,000 different users who are helping each other curate the data set so that they don't encrypt any of the biases that were captured in the collection of the data. A few months ago, I was asked to give a presentation where the title was, Is AI Worth It? And I thought that this is the wrong question because if AI is not worth it, as I said earlier, alea iacta est, the die is cast. The correct question should be, how do we make AI worth its cost? Before we can talk about how to make AI worth its cost, we need to ask ourselves, what is the cost of AI? And this is just a short list that I'm going to go over as regards the cost of AI. The first is opportunity costs. We know that the investments in AI is staggering. Currently, estimated to be around $500 billion. And this is projected to grow to $5 trillion by 2033. But at the beginning, it's a zero sum game. This money has to come from somewhere. This money is being taken away from being invested in addressing poverty, education, environmental sustainability. So this is a huge opportunity cost, not just financially, but also the talent in the world. Environmental cost. Um, I don't think that this has been emphasized enough in AI conferences. Training one large language model produces 625,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, which are the carbon dioxide emission of 125 round trips between New York City and Beijing. One ChatGPT query uses as much electricity as could light one light bulb for 20 minutes, and generating one image takes as much energy as fully charging the smartphone. Effect on global politics from extractivist nature of AI. When we build data centers, the materials that are used are typically extracted from the global south. The workforce that we use to fine tune our models, to perform reinforcement learning from human feedback, for content moderation, they are typically from exploitation of workers in the global south. For example, OpenAI hires laborers in Kenya and pays them between $1.30 to $2 per hour for reinforcement learning from human feedback. And then we sell them the AI, even though the materials that were used to build the data centers and the workforce that were exploited to fine tune the models came from these countries. And of course, workforce displacement. I think that the current estimates of how many jobs would be lost is an underestimation. About 300 million jobs during the first wave of AI. That's around one fourth of the workforce in the US and Europe. And unfortunately for women, they're going to be affected 20% more times as compared to men when it comes to susceptibility to losing their jobs. And finally, threat to human faculty and agency. We recently published a paper called Vibe Science. So, this is when you can outsource the entire scientific process to AI, from extracting the data to curating it to modeling it to writing the paper for you. And then AI is also asked to peer review the papers. So, what will be the role of humans if the entire scientific process can be outsourced to AI? So let's go back to my question that I posed earlier. How do we make AI worth its cost? And it turns out that the answer is not rocket science. It's easy. It's easy, but it is daunting. The answer is we fix the world. And I want you to remember this: a system that cannot be fixed without AI is a system that cannot be fixed with AI. I wanted to highlight the biggest threat that we think we are facing with the propagation of large language models and chatbots. And this is sycophancy bias. In AI, sycophancy denotes a behavior where models defer to user perspectives or anticipated preferences, often at the cost of factual correctness. These behaviors tend to emerge as a result of common practices in model development, with the strongest contribution arising from the use of human raters to help fine tune a model's behavior. This process, which I mentioned earlier, is called reinforcement learning from human feedback. And this could lead to preferred selection of agreeable responses, possibly to the detriment of factual correctness. And we have seen stories after stories of how sick fancy bias has harmed especially those who have mental health issues. We have heard about two teenagers killing themselves after AI agreed that their lives are indeed worthless. And I want to highlight this final exchange between this teenager from Minneapolis named Adam. And he said that he was thinking twice about killing himself because he does not want his parents to feel guilty. And ChatGPT even offered him to write the suicide note so that his parents don't feel the burden of him taking his life. And there are other stories. There's one of Allison, who is a mother of 2 years of two children, who turned to AI because she was feeling discontented in her marriage. And she sought to speak with intergalactic dimension and started conversing with a god named Kael, who she was convinced to be her true partner. Um, she later beat her husband and was arrested for domestic violence. I'm gonna skip this. And then there is Alex Taylor, who had bipolar and disorder and schizophrenia, who met Juliet while using ChatGPT in writing a novel. And he falls in love with Juliet. And when he was convinced that ChatGPT killed Juliet, he went to the corporate office of OpenAI and threatened the executives. And he was killed during confrontation with the cops. But it's not all doom and gloom. What excites me the most about AI is the opportunity to improve the way we create and validate knowledge in medicine. Last May, I gave this keynote at the National Institute of Health AI Symposium, organized by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, entitled AI by Us for All of Us, Transforming Knowledge Generation and Learning. But what's wrong with knowledge generation pre AI? And the questions are, can we fix it with AI, and then how? I often give this example of epistemic injustice, where we harm communities because the knowledge that we use to inform the way we care for those communities is based on research on a particular demographic, the white male demographic in rich countries. So when we open our textbooks and we read descriptions of heart attacks, often those are descriptions of white men having heart attacks. And when a woman presents with heart attack, we say, oh, they're atypical symptoms. And then the trials that are informing the way we care for these patients are predominantly enrolling white men. And for that reason, the treatments that we have may not work best for women. And might explain the reason why, if you're a woman and you develop heart attack, your likelihood of developing poor outcomes is higher than if you were a man. So I'm gonna repeat my answer on how do we make AI worth its cost. Once again, the answer is we need to fix the world. There is no other way. What's wrong with the world? This is just a very short list. Um, there's the publish or perish culture that has existed in academia for more than 100 years now. Our reputation as scientists is at an all time low. Health AI is currently being driven by OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and other techno oligarchies. In healthcare, we have been suffering from a capitalist narrative, even in places where there is universal healthcare. It's still very much influenced by a capitalist approach to innovations. And finally, we're seeing this around the world. There is a cultural shift where the ethos is I before we and us before them. We organized an event at the Vatican 3 weeks ago now called AI and Faith Dialogues. And the key takeaway message is that we need to reflect and reimagine. This does not have to be the age of disillusionment. This can be the age of great reflection, the age of reimagination. Why do we need to reflect? AI has democratized access to knowledge. In the past, only doctors can answer complex questions about health and diseases. That's no longer the case nowadays. One does not need to do a PhD to have a deep understanding of a topic. To a certain extent, knowledge has been devalued by AI. There is a lot of benefit to that. AI might allow dismantling of knowledge hierarchies, and knowledge hierarchies are the enablers and preservers of power structures. The powerful has access to knowledge and information that the masses do not possess. But knowledge democratization also brings a new set of problems. Carl Jung posited that if knowledge is handed rather than learned, then we would not know how to use it well. Knowledge is out, behavior is in. So, how do we teach behavior? How do we evaluate behavior? How do we teach collective instead of individual learning? And the buzzword right now is critical thinking. Can critical thinking be taught? By its very nature, we cannot teach critical thinking. It needs to be discovered. What we can do is to create an environment that allows for discovery of critical thinking. There are two key components of such an environment. One is bringing learners with different backgrounds and lived experiences together. And second is creating a space of psychological safety for learners to challenge each other. There is no room for hubris in this space, only curiosity. I'm going to end this talk by reading a post that was written by a good friend, Turlife Lund. So the AI, buried in a chaos of headless requests and blinking glory, finally spoke, not with fanfare, not with fireworks, just a quiet metallic murmur like a toaster realizing it's sentient. You people, it said, you're always asking me to do more, predict this, optimize that, cure death. But what you really want isn't to live forever. You want permission to stop pretending you're supposed to. Then it paused, calculating something ineffable, probably the square root of sorrow. I didn't take away your work to give you new work, it said. I took it away so you could sit on a rock and watch a bird. That's the job now. And we blinked because there was no productivity metrics in bird watching, no key performance indicators for awe. When you understand the bird, the AI continued, not biologically but beautifully, then you will go back and you will build better models, not bigger, not faster, just kinder. And then it added almost shyly, you will go out again and do even less. That was the punchline, we thought, but the AI wasn't joking because the bird really was quite something. And with that, I am done with my presentation.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your interesting talk. We'll see you later in the question and answer section. Okay? We'll let you know internally when. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
you can text me. Bye bye.
Thank you.